Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we are going to be talking about innovation and how we foster it from a young age in America. There's an interesting article coming out about a 17-year-old who actually redesigned how drones and high-speed drones can work, and it's fascinating, and I want to actually go to the root of it. How can we get more of these young innovators? And of course, we will end today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. Now, that's enough rambling from me. Let's jump into our daily debate. When you were 17, what was your greatest aspiration? What were you aiming for? I'm always interested to hear. I want to hear from older people, younger people. Maybe there's a generational divide since I seem to have both people or both type of people listening. So with that said, let's actually get into our article from Business Insider. The headline reads, a 17-year-old designed a cheaper, more efficient drone. The Department of Defense just awarded him $23,000 for it. And to provide a little bit of context, this is actually split over two types of grants. Quote, his innovation won him an $8,000 scholarship in April at the Junior Science and Humanities Symposium funded by the Defense Department. Then on May 16th, he received an even larger scholarship of $15,000 from the U.S. Navy, which he won after presenting his research at the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair, end quote. And we have in the United States a very special combination of proficiency in technology, dissemination of information, and youth capital. And that's not to say that we have the most youth capital out there, but we have effective and efficient youth capital, mainly because a majority of our population, a majority of our young population are actually getting proper nutrients compared to the rest of the world, not necessarily first world countries, but third world countries or countries that are underdeveloped, developing countries. Much more of their children population are undernourished, meaning that they cannot reach their full capacity as a human being because your brain needs nutrients when you're younger in order to grow up. You've heard all of these things before. So these three things, not necessarily a education system, a dissemination of information. I was very specific on that point. And the reason I say that is because what kid, this friend here, Taylor, what kid is learning how to code, design, 3D print, and engineer all in school? Very few of them. There are very select schools. There's a school actually in Northern Virginia closer to where I grew up called Thomas Jefferson that does a lot of specialization in these sort of things. There are other schools that are popping up that are homeschool-esque in that they're networks of parents talking with teachers about specialized curricula that dive into what the students want to do, and they have projects that are oriented towards engineering and things like this. There are special schools all across the United States, but these are reserved for a select few, whether the most intelligent, the richest, or the ones who are willing to opt out and do something that is beyond the normal. They have time and energy as parents in order to do this. Not everybody's able to. So the reason I say dissemination of information is because from what I understand, Taylor does not go to one of these special schools. It's a summer project that he put his time and effort into. He literally talks about trying to address some of these issues by going to Reddit and GitHub and all these other locales in order to find code, in order to get ideas, and in order to foster the necessary equipment and knowledge inside himself in order to reach his ends, which is a modified drone that is much more like a VTOL, where the propellers, the rotors are able to spin up, but then they are actually put to use during the flight in order to propel the drone to go faster, and this can make it more efficient per Taylor's own claims and some of the backing of the comments from people at the Defense Department and other science institutions that said this is actually a huge new idea. And when I say new idea, it's not necessarily that the technology itself is new, because Taylor's drawing on some previous ideas here, and that's the beauty of the American system, where we share our ideas, we are able to patent them and therefore share them widely without fear of not necessarily getting money for our innovation and getting back reward for our time, but also people can learn from them, they can build off of them, they share their ideas because it's an innovation economy, and there's this idea of iterating and working together in order to reach a place where you can do better. Now, that's not to say that it's everywhere. There are certain areas areas that is very siloed off, and they're trying to restrict not necessarily innovation, but they're trying to restrict who has access to it, so that they can get their own money out of it. But there was a beautiful thing about the coding community, which is everybody tries to put their stuff out online. We're not everybody. A lot of them are open source kind of people. They want to share and disseminate information because they want the next generation to learn from them. They want other people to do what they're doing, or they feel as though they came up with a great fix to something. Therefore, they want to improve the community overall. But that also comes with some replication, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, as Business Insider points out here. Quote, "That's not a new concept. David Handelman, a senior roboticist at Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory, noted that aerospace companies have tinkered with tilting rotors for decades. But Taylor designed his rotor tilting drone to be completely 3D printed and completely modular. A user can pop the tail and wings out of their sockets and replace them with any custom appendages," end quote. And this is another beautiful thing about an economy that is built on constant iteration, because in that economy you create modular designs and simply put them out there. You can say, hey, this is my design, you have to buy the base from me, but I'm going to allow other companies, in order to come in and better my product, to have designs out in the public where they can create modules and things that are built into this. Now, how do we foster this sort of dynamic, besides the fact that we already have it? And I've been glazing the United States here, saying, oh, we already have it, but how do we foster it in the next generation? We have to, one, keep them curious. We have to show them new innovations. We have to show them what we are capable of and how we got here, but also we have to keep them looking towards the horizon. And that comes in very different forms for very different people, whether it be looking back on our literary history and trying to craft new ways to tell universal truths about the world and display knowledge out for the next generation and for people on an everyday basis, or describing the engineering prowess of this country. We have to put our innovations front and center, not necessarily the innovators. The innovators are important. I'm not trying to not give them credit, and they deserve credit. Otherwise, some people who are arrogant won't actually go and innovate because they want the fame that comes of being a great inventor. But also put those innovations and how they've helped people's lives, what they have also iterated into, out in front of our students. And this normally is going to mean not just showing them in a history book, but giving them hands-on training and ideas of this sort. And that's why when I said all those special schools that get all this extra funding and they are very selective, they have these programs that allow students to do this. And not only are students already naturally curious and intelligent, and they want to tackle these sort of things, but they're drawn to what these changes over time have created and what they could do in order to create the next change that will affect people's lives directly. We need to put an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, math. You've heard this for sure. And schools are starting to do it to some degree, and there are plenty of products for younger kids. But we need a more comprehensive way to supplement this across the nation. And you're thinking to yourself, whoa, Alex, it sounds like you're saying big government. It sounds like you're saying we need to have the Department of Education step in. And I would say, no. Here's what you do. If we're able to get the government out of the college loan game, therefore subsidizing colleges and therefore taking on some of their costs, then we can essentially not necessarily turn them private, because they could still be publicly funded on a state level, but we could at least strip it of enough funding that they could balance their sheets out, essentially, that they're not so hyperinflated because of this extra stimulus that allows them to run at higher cost because the government's simply paying for things. And then we could try to push on a national scale. We should try to get our universities to provide more of these grants. And that's not to say the Naval Academy literally just gave one. Then again, government branch, a little bit different. But Harvard, Yale, all these prestigious schools already give some of these grants out to innovative young students, but we need to try to push more. That's not to say all universities will go the wayside. It doesn't mean that humanities departments are going to go away, but we need to reorient as a society towards this sort of thing if we want to see more proper results out of it, if we want to see the next generation fully use that brain of theirs for something that is productive, innovative, will ease people's lives. And like I said, it's not as if there's not room for the humanities. It's not as if there's not room for theater majors and so on and so forth. But maybe that should be relegated to a smaller percentage of the population, simply because those are less productive and they are less likely to materially benefit not only one person's life, not even a community, but entire generations upon generations. One theater performance can change somebody's life. One theater performance can alter a way community thinks. A theater performance can bring joy to people's lives, but will it create a chain of events that lead to the next innovation that could completely change humanity? No, it's not quite there. So the value add is not the same, and we need to orient towards what adds value to our economy, our society, and our species. So with that said, I'm going to go to our daily delight. And this story had me, I don't want to say giggly, that's not fair, but made me feel good when I was listening to the audio version that I got across in my ears. This one comes from Dog Time. The headline reads, "Dog owner reveals Rottweiler has to supervise everything she does." And honestly, this Rottie does get involved in everything. Combing the hair, cooking the food. It is right there next to her, watching what she does. And it's honestly adorable. We love to see our pets being loyal. As long as, she's giving the love back to the Rottie, it's probably going to continue as it is. So, with that said, if you want to check out today's articles, all the links will be in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle where I post the links directly to these videos, as well as the ones that come out on Tuesday and Thursday. Those are 6 and 6. They're international news. They're meant to be really easy to consume. So 6 stories from around the world in about 6 minutes or less. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.